So maybe Llama 4 is not this bad, but I did get a kick out of this picture here because it does feel like this. It feels like Llama 4 is a huge letdown. And now there's even allegations that Llama 4 cheated on benchmarks, which honestly kind of makes sense because none of the benchmarks align with what I see in testing. But I do want to show you something that I was able to actually get working with Llama 4, Maverick in particular, in RooCode. And I want to show you basically a new mode that I've created called Micromanager. And in Micromanager, I'm using Google Gemini 2.5 Pro to basically be a micromanager over Llama 4. And to show you the output of that, I actually got a functioning snake game. And to put this into perspective, I probably did 20 iterations trying different prompts, trying different ways of actually breaking out the work for it in RooCode and in Jan.ai, and I couldn't really get it very functioning. But I stumbled upon something. I used Grok 3 to build a detailed plan of what needed to be built. So you can see the prompt that I ended up giving Maverick here. Just a ton of information, trying to tell it everything I could about what a Tetris game is. What I ultimately came up with is a ton of different versions. To give you kind of just a quick high level view of this, the chain of thought, which is the COT ones, they just do not work. They crash right away. So I started going a little bit more complex. So in this one, I've tried different temperatures. Temperature doesn't seem to matter that much. I've even done some at temperature 2, and it also was variable. Like, it doesn't seem like it matters that much as you would think it would. And I also tried frequency penalty. And then I go a little bit more complex with my custom 2 one, and I actually start getting a little bit better results. I tell it to architect, pseudocode, implement, review, and I'm starting to get a little bit better. And then I go into the version that I showed you, and we actually start getting working versions of Tetris. Now, is it perfect? No, but I couldn't even get this far in some of the previous ones. So running this in Jan.ai, I actually start thinking, really, Llama 4 is dumb. It's good at like writing code if it knows what it needs to write, if I tell it what to write, but it's not good at like planning what it needs to do. So that led me down this path of building what I'm calling the micromanager. And what the micromanager is a custom mode that I have made very specifically only be able to use the architect mode and a new mode I created called Llama 4. And Llama 4 is basically the code mode, but very explicitly told that you are my assistant programmer named Rue Jr. Your job is to implement the exact code I tell you to and nothing else. And I actually override the prompt to simplify it down a bunch. I pull out a bunch of things and I actually add a few different rules in there. And the results of this actually start to work. And I'll show you side by side what I'm talking about here. But this is the flow that Micromanager took. I actually did some previous tests. It failed. So ignore everything prior to this. Basically, what I say is in a new folder called Snake Game, create a fully functioning Snake Game. This is ran in Gemini 2.5 Pro. It goes into architect mode. This is architect mode here. So you can see here that it actually goes through and plans out the components it needs, the CSS, all of that stuff. That ultimately comes back and we end up with the structure. And then we start calling, you can see the price here. We're calling Llama 4. And then we come back, we're like, all right, do this now. And then we're going to say, create the scripts file. And it goes, and then it tells it to input the keyboard instruction. And look at the details it gives it. It basically kind of pseudocodes out what needs to be implemented for Llama 4. Now, whether this is a good idea or not, I don't know. But what I was trying to solve was, can I get Llama 4 to be productive in some way by pairing it with a better LLM? Because it is relatively cheap. And the results of this is it actually freaking worked. When I go into this version, let me show you what I did with that same prompt. And this happens very consistently in many different ways. This just failed. It does not work in RooCode. It's like, oh, okay, make a directory, hit show pygame, and then it tries to look at the directories again, and then it looks at snake game, and then it goes pip show pygame, then it tries to make a directory again. So I ended up stopping it because I'm just paying for nothing. When I try to do any sort of code in the code mode, it just isn't that great, right? But I found that Llama 4 can do what you tell it to do. And we're going to run a test together just to show you kind of how this works here in a second. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about LM Arena because this is the most bogus thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And it turns out that Llama 4, or the Llama team, actually put a different model, a optimized version of the model on LM Arena so that the results would be skewed. Because humans are judging it, they made a model that humans are going to react to better. And this is just really unfortunate to me because this model is nowhere near number one. And it really does a disservice, in my opinion, to Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is arguably the best real world model now. It holds its context really well. It codes like a freaking beast. So this is very disappointing. But I am happy to see that LM Arena did reply to this. And I do think they have a lot of work cut out for them. Because if they do not figure this out, like LM Arena is going to be useless. I'm never going to go to it again. It's very important they figure this out. It's worth like just knowing that they are trying to make changes so that the guidelines are followed a little bit better going forward because this isn't in the nature of what they meant when they created LM Arena. They didn't want people to game their benchmarks that they have. And ultimately, they're adding a different version of the model so that we can actually hopefully start seeing some real results, the ones that we're actually using. And a lot of people are just really frustrated with Llama 4, and myself included. But I will say, I don't think all hope is lost yet, because if we go back to thinking about the long-term play of AI, and I do see the cost continually to increase, like again and again, and we start thinking about different modes that we can create that allow us to send off jobs based on the complexity of the job. Because if I'm doing a very simple snake game, which is very, very basic, I don't need to pay Gemini 2.5 Pro fees. I don't need to pay Claude fees. I can use Gemini 2.5 Pro to plan, and then I can use Llama 4. I probably wouldn't use Llama 4, just to be totally honest, but I could use Llama 4 to do the editing, the diffing, the reading of the file, figuring out where the code needs to go. And you could ultimately even have another mode that validates the code that's put in there. You could have a code reviewer. Like I see so much potential in this boomerang style method of coding. All right, so to show you how this works, we're going to do first a test in with Micromanager mode. I basically wanted to create a website that will count the words, characters, and sentences in text that I paste in. I want it to be like teal and white, and to put it in a new folder called word counter. Now we're in Micromanager mode. Currently, I've told Micromanager mode that it should only use Architect and Llama 4. The problem is sometimes Architect wants to go into code mode instead of go back to my Micromanager mode. Not always, but if that happens, I'll have to kill it and restart it because I need to probably make a new Architect mode that's basically a clone of the current Architect mode, but doesn't allow it to switch anywhere but back to the previous task. But let's just see what ends up happening here. Creating a pretty good plan here. I'm happy with the file breakup. It doesn't need to be anything too complex. 3 files. I'm happy they didn't put the JavaScript in the index.html. Great. So it doesn't look like it's going to bounce me to code mode now. So I'm going to complete task and return. Now, theoretically, we should start writing code at this point, and it'll break it up into a little bit more mini steps. So here we go. We got a new subtask for Llama 4 mode. And in this one, it wants to create the HTML file. I'm going to go ahead and prove that. You can see what's getting passed into it a little bit. Very explicit information about it. Very, very explicit. So here we're going to go ahead and make the directory, and I'm going to approve that. Now it's creating the HTML. And some of you might be saying, why do this when you just have the main model do this? And I would say that's a good question, because ultimately, I don't know where this is going to land long term. If I need to run some side-by-side comparisons where if I just have Gemini 2.5 do this job, what's the cost of that versus offsetting some of the work to a smaller model to do the grunt work? It's like having an intern. So basically, I'm giving Gemini 2.5 an intern here. So now it created the styles.css file, and you can see it's picking up the colors correctly. And to show you this, like, check out what it's giving it. The background colors, the default colors for text, the paragraph styling. I mean, it's kind of neat the way I've got it prompted to delegate very explicit tasks down. And then the way Llama 4, I'm told, like, basically you just exactly do the code that you're told to do. Don't do anything else. I'm finally able to get Llama 4 to do something. So we're in Micromanager mode now, which means this task is completed. I need to fix this, but I'm on Windows. This will not work. That's okay. I can just run that manually here. All right, so this is what it created. And it seems to be working with the number of characters where this is my prompt. Actually, no, this is the code mode prompt from Roo. So I just pasted it in there to see if it would actually uh, show something. And it looks good. The color is about what I would expect with teal. It's white. Is it styled perfectly? No, but I have the functionality built with a combination of Llama 4 and Gemini 2.5 Pro. I may not use Llama 4 going forward, but the idea of this is really exciting to me. Okay, so I'm in another repo now. This is the one where I did all those Tetris tests I was talking about before, and I've got a snake game that doesn't work because it just kept looping. So I'm in code mode, and just to show you, I still have Maverick set. So I'm not using my Llama 4 mode because it expects instructions on how to do it. But I am not optimistic this is going to work at all. The other thing to show you is I actually found the cluster provider to be the best. I've ran every one of them now a ton, and cluster seems to be the most reliable currently from like the quality output. So whatever they have their model tuned to just seems to work a little bit better. Okay, so we're gonna make our word counter. I'd be so happy if this works. Let's see what happens though. Okay, it's creating the styles now. It's actually doing better than I thought it would, to be honest with you. Okay, so this is what it made. And let's see here. Okay, so there's some sort of error in there that's doing it. I'm actually surprised it generated as well as it did, to be totally honest with you. So I mean, I guess that's a positive. Let me try just putting like Adam in here and clearing this. Hit count. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. I thought there would be like text in here somewhere. Okay, yeah, so here's the word count, character count, sentence count. It's just not filled in. So it didn't work. Should it have worked? I don't know. It probably should have worked. If I did this with Gemini 2.0 Flash, I think it probably would have worked, to be totally honest with you. But it did actually create code because I'm using that particular provider that I talked about named Cluster. I do override the temperature to 0, just to make that very clear. For all the tests I'm doing, keep it at 0. All right. I'm going to try a little bit more of a complex prompt. I'm going to have it build an e-commerce site, basically for cats that are up for sale for adoption. We're going to call it Rescue Cat, and I'm going to kick it off in Micromanager mode here because the word counter was pretty simple. Again, Micromanager mode uses Gemini 2.5 Pro. Architect mode uses Gemini 2.5 Pro. And we're going to see if we can come up with something decent from this. Yeah, it seems to be properly kicking into the Llama 4 mode back and forth. So far, we have the index.html file created. And now we've just created the styles.css file, which you can kind of see the orange color that I picked there. I actually like that. It's pretty nice. And now we're on to, this is probably the third or fourth task that it's done. Check out the instructions that it's giving it with how I've got this tuned currently. telling it to create files. It tells it the data structure that needs to be done, the DOM references. Like it really is a micromanager. It's telling it, exactly how to write the code. I worked on a team once where we had some architects and senior engineers that would basically tell you what code to change in a file. And I'm like, dude, why not just do it if you're already looking at the code anyway? Like, why make a ticket for that? Like, I don't want to just basically copy and paste what you already did out of the ticket and put it into code. I'm like, that's not fulfilling for me at all. So we were able to change that, but this is what this reminds me of is we've got this super engineer who's doing all the work of planning everything, but we're maybe saving costs by having Llama 4 actually implement the code. But yeah, it's an interesting approach. I kind of want to do more exploration on this and introduce even more modes for it. We're done. I'm gonna load it up. Curious what you think this is gonna look like. I'm disappointed in one thing when I look at it. Maybe a lot of things, but the one thing that I see right away is there's no images of visible. I'm wondering if they're supposed to be like right here. Is their idea behind it? So they do have the filtering here. The styling's not great, but it is functional. This is way different than I was able to get even yesterday with Llama 4. So really tuning it so that it's doing very specific things seems to be the key. And one could argue, what is really the value of basically using a model to do this very explicit part of the work that you could just have the big model do? And honestly, I think it's going to depend on cost because I don't know if you guys are feeling it, but AI is getting more and more expensive for us to code with. I was reading online that some people are spending, $2,000 a month. It's like I can't afford that. But I literally can't put $2,000 a month into coding. Not that I would. I try to keep it as reasonable as possible. But I do like the idea of having the control like this, whether it's Llama 4, Quasar Alpha, some other small model that's out there that I really like. Why not try to use the things that would eat up tokens on a big model that cost you more? Why not use a smaller model to try to do some of this? Yesterday, Llama 4, I wasn't able to really get to generate even functioning things at all. Today, I actually got functioning Tetris game, functioning snake game. I got a word counter that actually worked decent. I've got I don't this a very ugly looking e-commerce site that needs a lot of work, but it's making code that actually works today because of the way I've tuned the prompt. So yeah, maybe to wrap up this video a little bit, I'm just gonna play the snake game that I finally got to work with Llama 4. Uh, it's one of those things where I'm super bummed about it because we have what is it, a 400 billion parameter model that I don't feel like act like a 400 billion parameter model. I mean, rumor has it that ChatGPT 4.0 is a 400 billion parameter model, and it works so much better than Llama 4. I also am disappointed that there's been some possible benchmark cheating that's been going on here. So it kind of put a sour taste in my mouth. But at the same time, what I care about more than anything is like, does the AI do the thing I want it to do? And Llama 4 does not really do that for coding, but all hope is not lost because I do think there's probably something to this idea of using dumb models that need like explicit directions, but yet to let the big, more expensive models actually provide those directions. And I'm curious what you guys think about that. Like, would you do something like I did with my micromanager mode? Do you have other ideas for how we could maybe break up the work in such a way that we could save money, but still be able to get value out of models that just clearly aren't as powerful? The other thing that I would say is the context limit in my testing of Llama does not seem that good. I've tried loading in a bunch of code into it, its recall is subpar. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, everyone.